Welcome to another video. Hope everyone's doing alright and that. Today we're going to be building something a little bit easier. We're going to be having a go at this Marine Spitfire so I can give this airbrush a run out for the first time before I move on to two more expensive, more complicated builds and that. And yeah, fantastic. If you watched the Messerschmitt video, you'll have seen I had mega problems with my airbrush right from the start of part 2 really like. But hopefully this is going to put it right in that. We'll have a quick look at the airbrush. I'll tell you what the problems I had with it was. Then we'll get to building this thing. Right, we'll start with having a look at my airbrushes. These are the two I already own. And this is the one I've just bought. This one is a Fendga FE-183. It come free, or I think it was a £20 upgrade with the compressor. And to be honest with you, I've had no problems whatsoever with this brush. None. It won't pass primer through it and that. It just refuses to pass primer through it, and varnish. You can get a little bit of trouble with varnish. But as long as you just stick to the paints like La Valero Air and that, it works an absolute treat. But this is the brush that failed us. It was my first ever airbrush. It was a Galahari, or Galahari, I don't know how to say it properly. That's the box it come in. Advanced GH80 39. I bought it after seeing some proper good reviews and that. And I'll tell you what, I've had it about a year and that, and it's been alright, you know, it's been alright. But over the last month or so, it has crept up with some issues and that, blocking all the time and stuff not coming out properly. But at the start of the second part of the last video, the Messerschmitt video, it just refused to pass any paint through it whatsoever. I've done the priming went on absolutely fantastic. Swapped it all over, washed it out, cleaned it out with airbrush cleaner and that, left it for about 3 or 4 days, come back, put blue paint in, and it wouldn't come out. I got a little bit frustrated. I tried to paint the model by hand, and I knew that wasn't going to work. So I put everything on hold, watched a load of videos, and I figured it out. It was the nozzle. I've stuffed the nozzle when I've been cleaning it. I've been going a bit too heavy-handed with it, one of these things and that, and I've absolutely mullered the end of the nozzle. I put a zoomed-up photo on the screen because it's tiny, but you can see that's never going to work again. Because normally, if it bubbles up, with this on, it's just usually this is slack, or there's a bit of dirt on a bit of paint on the needle, and you just got to wipe it off. But I went online to try and find a replacement nozzle for this, expecting it to be reasonable. And a nozzle, I don't know if it's reasonable or not because I'm a beginner, but a nozzle for this is £8, which is fine, but £6 postage, so £14 for a nozzle. I mean, that might be right, I don't really know, but as a beginner, I think I'm going to stuff a few more nozzles up in that. And I don't really want to be replacing them at £14 a go. So I opted to go for another Fendga airbrush. That's where this one comes in. I got this one off Amazon, $26.99 it was. It's an FE-183, but it was advertised as a high flow one, so I should have no problems with the primers and the varnishes and that. I think it's got a 0.5 nozzle and a 0.5 needle in it, so it should be absolutely fantastic. And yeah, and that's it basically like. So right, let's get the model out of its box, see what we're dealing with, and see the Spitfire come together. Right, this is the model we're going to be building today, a Marine Spitfire from Airfix. I got it as part of a double set with a red arrow, which I built a few weeks ago and stuck it in a cabinet. But it's a pretty straightforward model, so it should allow us a bit more time to concentrate on the airbrush and that. And yeah, fantastic. It comes over 3 sprues. One of them's mainly made up with like this shadow stand and that. These look great when they're painted up and the model sat on them. Looks fantastic. But we've got our instructions here. I didn't download them from Scalemates because it's a book that's got both the Spitfire and the red arrows in. But when you download them from Scalemates, it only shows you the red arrows one. But we'll be working from the booklet. But it's quite a nice booklet, nicely laid out and that. Fantastic. Like I say, it's a straightforward model kit. So hopefully we'll get it looking fine. I am going to try and concentrate on airbrushing the camo in. I'm going to have a good go at it. I'm going to go and get some Blu-Tac so I can mask them off. I'm going to try and stick to their paints as much as possible, but I am going to be using this green paint. It's leftovers from the Messerschmitt. There's absolutely loads of it, so that will be the green. So right, enough of me waffling on. Grab yourself a cuppa, put your feet up, and let's see this thing come together. That's the Spitfire all finished. My first attempt doing Blu-Tac camouflage, and I tell you what, I'm pretty pleased with how this one's come out. The model went together really well. I know it was a simpler build, but even then can bite you back at times. And the Airbrush, the new one, worked an absolute treat. I had no problems with it whatsoever. In fact, I used it for the full build. It took us a little while to get used to how fast the paint come out and controlling it and that. But once I got into it, it worked a treat. It's given us loads of confidence for the next build, where there's lots of big panels to paint and that. And yeah, fantastic. My old Airbrush, this Galahari one, I am going to replace the nozzle and the needle in that. I think I've got a 3.5mm nozzle or something kicking about somewhere. So I'm going to return it back to a thinner nozzle. And hopefully I'll treat it with a bit more care in that. And we'll start using this one again. But for the next model build, I'll probably just use this one. And maybe this one if I need to get in finer. But fantastic. But let's have a closer look at the model. Because it was my first attempt at this Blu-Tac masking and that. It's not perfect. I have made a couple of mistakes. But for my first attempt, I'll take it, you know. It looks chalk and cheese to any Spitfire that I've built in the past. I did pull a little bit of paint off. I don't know if I scratched it off or I've pulled it off when I got a bit too heavy with the Blu-Tac. I'll check in the edit. Now I'll be able to see what I've done wrong. These green lines, they look really shaded in and that. Fantastic. Not as harsh. Here's the one I've done a few months ago. And I masked it off with tape. And these lines are so rough. That almost looks like a cartoon. Like chalk and cheese. You wouldn't think the same model made them a few months apart. I didn't go too heavy on the details in that. I sort of kept it basic so I could concentrate on using the airbrush. But overall, it's come out great. I concentrated a bit more on the decals this time. I used the set, then the microsol, and let them blend into the panels to see if I could get that painted on look. And to be honest with you, on a couple of them, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. So overall, I'm really pleased with how this one's come out. Absolutely fantastic. So right, let's find a spot in the cabinet and bring this video in. Right, I found a spot on the top shelf alongside the red arrow that come in the same box. It's replaced the one that was there. That's gone down to the third shelf with all the mixed stuff. And yeah, fantastic. Right, let's say we're goodbyes, have a look at the next model and bring this video in. Next time, I'm going to be having a go at my biggest and probably most challenging model yet. And one of the most iconic vehicles of all time. It's definitely one of the most iconic vehicles of my lifetime, that's for sure. And we're going to be having a go at building this thing, a space shuttle. Absolutely fantastic, it's massive. It's the last model I got off that guy on Facebook. I've noticed his advert's still there, so I'm going to try and get in contact with him and see if I can get some more. But yeah, next time we're going to be having a go at this monster. Absolutely fantastic. So if you like the video, hit likes, hit subscribes, do all the YouTubey stuff for us. And I'll see you on the next one. See you later.